You're really annoying, you know. A bossy old man get fired.
Sean, a new employee I'm training, showed up to work drunk, so I couldn't overlook it and had to reprimand him, but I ended up being scolded by the company president, who is Sean's father. Disappointed, I submitted my resignation and was using up my paid leave when I never expected to receive a barrage of calls from the president. My name is Timothy Irvin. I'm a 43-year-old businessman. I joined my current company right after graduating from college and have been working in sales. Fortunately, I gained the trust of my superiors and was promoted to branch manager in a regional office in my 8th year. I've worked hard until today. Such efforts were recognized, and after 10 years, I was called back to the headquarters. The headquarters had changed in various ways after 10 years, and I was a bit confused at first. The company's policy had shifted even more toward a performance-first approach, probably because the president changed while I was in the regions. The younger employees were running around, sweating, and looking busy with their work every day. The hustle and bustle at headquarters overwhelmed me, but the job itself was something I had always been doing in the regions. I used my natural communication skills to deepen relationships with clients. As I did so, I adapted to the work at the main office and became able to give precise instructions to my subordinates. 3 years have passed, and now I'm entrusted with training new employees, and I feel increasingly expected by my superiors. Teaching eager and hopeful newcomers is challenging at times, but it's also a lot of fun. However, one day, an unbelievable new recruit showed up. His name is Sean Klein. He's a promising new recruit, having just graduated from a prestigious private university this year. However, just 3 months after joining, he was transferred to my sales department in an unusual move. I was wondering what the circumstances might be when I was called by the president.
I heard you've handled training multiple times before, and you're good at training newbies. I would really like you to take on training my son.
Your son, sir. That's when I finally realized. The president's name is Henry Klein, meaning Sean Klein, the newbie who was transferred so soon after joining, is the president's son. The next day, I immediately began instructing Sean. But the trouble was, he wouldn't listen to my instructions at all and wouldn't try to engage in his work. Every time I pointed out something I noticed, he would hint at his status as the president's son and take an arrogant attitude towards me, saying, "I wonder if it's okay to talk to me like that. I don't care what happens." Of course, he had no common sense as a professional, and as his trainer, I was having a headache every day. He would show up at the workplace leisurely after the start time and then spend all day fiddling with his cell phone at his desk. Even when I pointed out his attitude, he would just respond nonchalantly as if he hadn't left his student days behind, and there was no improvement for days. When you're going to be late, you need to call in advance. It's not okay to be late without notice. I had to point out the obvious over and over, and my stress built up, but Sean remained nonchalant.
Duh, I'm not here to do boring work. I'm just going around various departments preparing for the day I become president. It's troublesome to be treated the same as regular employees.
He says it so confidently, but it's unacceptable to come to the company and just play around all the time. I repeatedly urged him sternly, but Sean always responded with a frivolous attitude, not taking my advice seriously. As I was troubled by this quite problematic newbie, an unbelievable incident occurred one day. Sean came to work reeking of alcohol. "Hey, Sean, what's that smell? Did you drink alcohol and come to the company?"
Sorry. I drank a bit too much last night. I'm going to take a break now, so no worries,"
he said casually, and was actually about to go to the company's medical room, so I hurriedly stopped him. "Wait a minute. I understand you're not feeling well, but you're hungover, right? It's not good to drink so much knowing you have work the next day." Sean turned around looking annoyed and just yawned repeatedly without responding. Even if he is the president's son, such work attitudes cannot be overlooked. If this continues, it will affect your evaluation. What if it was the day before an important meeting?
"Ugh. You're so annoying."
I might have spoken harshly, but Sean suddenly snapped back.
"I came at the start time because you told me to come to the company, Timothy. If I'm going to be bossed around like this, I won't feel like coming into the office."
It's not ordering around. This is guidance. I'm your trainer, telling you not to drink and come to the company. I responded calmly, but Sean sulkily pouted and glared back at me. And almost as if he'd come up with a brilliant idea, he smirked.
"If you say it's training, you think you can say anything. Timothy, if you keep treating me this way, I'll complain to my dad."
Sean said this with a smug look, and I was left speechless. Even though Sean is supposedly a professional, instead of reflecting on the issues pointed out, he was acting childishly by threatening to tell his dad when he got upset. And Sean, seeing that I said nothing, apparently took it as fear of the president finding out, and plastered a more disturbing grin on his face as he complained further.
"Actually, I've already talked to my dad about how terrible your guidance is. Guess what he said?"
Without waiting for my answer, Sean continued laughing uproariously.
"He said he'd fire any employee I don't like right away. What are you going to do, Timothy? You can't live without this job, can you?"
I was stunned to hear Sean's words. It's only been a few years since the current president took over, but I didn't think he was someone who would make such foolish decisions. Pleased with my shocked expression, Sean smirked and said, "So, I don't need your guidance anymore. I pretty much know all about the sales department now, so consider the training over." Then he left for the medical room, yawning continuously. I couldn't believe the president would make such a decision. I went straight to the president to verify this, but soon doubted my own ears.
If you heard it from my son, then the conversation is quick. Sean is all grown up now, so the training is over. Good job.
Wait, Henry. He's not at all ready as a professional. I would really appreciate it if you could reprimand him for coming to work drunk. I pleaded Sean's lack of common sense, but the president just nodded lightly.
Well, young folks tend to mess up. It's good for Sean to be spirited since he's a man.
Yeah. I stared back at the president in disbelief. Then the president nodded repeatedly, saying, "He has energy because he's young. That's part of Sean's charm, and I wish you, Timothy, could be more lenient with the younger employees." To my astonishment, what Sean had said was true. Instead of addressing Sean's work attitude, the president, his father, ended up admonishing me. I continued to negotiate persistently, but it remained unimproved as he insisted it didn't interfere with work. Empowered by the president's endorsement, Sean began coming to the company drunk more frequently and never changed his attitude. As I was wondering how to handle this, Sean showed up drunk to work one day. The drunkest he had ever been, barely able to walk straight. I couldn't ignore it, so I headed straight to Sean's. I've told you many times, coming to work drunk isn't good. Today, you need to reflect.
Og. You're really annoying, you know. A bossy old man get fired.
Sean snapped back and then pulled out his cell phone to make a call. He muttered something into the phone and then, grinning, handed me the cell phone. The voice from the other end was the president's.
Timothy, I expected more from you. Aren't you being too harsh on my son?
Henry. As usual, the president understood nothing. Nothing had changed since I first approached him about the issue. Neither the president nor Sean had changed. If this is how the company operates, it's unfortunate, but there's nothing I can do. I conveyed the decision I had been considering to the president. Understood. Since I'm apparently not of much use to you, I'll resign.
Well, that's unfortunate. But if that's the decision you've come to, Timothy, there's nothing I can do about it.
After the call ended, I handed the phone back to Sean, who smirked exaggeratedly and patted his chest in relief.
Good. Now I can work freely starting today. I was so tired of being nagged about the little things.
Without responding, I returned to my desk, wrote my resignation, and submitted it. I decided to take a leave of absence starting the next day to use up my accumulated paid time off. I never thought I would leave the company I had served for so many years in this manner, but perhaps this too was fate. I quietly went home, feeling lonely as I remembered how excited I had been when I returned to the headquarters. The next day, for the first time in years, I enjoyed sleeping in. Having woken up early for work all these years, it was the first time in a long while that I could relax on a weekday. While sipping my coffee leisurely after breakfast and thinking about taking a walk, I suddenly received a call from the president. Looking at the clock, it was just past 9:30 a.m., a little after the start of the workday. Wondering what it could be about, but having gone through so much the day before, I wasn't inclined to answer right away. I thought I'd call back later, but unexpectedly the phone kept ringing repeatedly. Eventually, calls even came from what seemed to be the president's personal number, not giving me a moment's rest from the ringing. But I had piled up tasks to do even after submitting my resignation, so I wasn't in the mood to answer. Besides, if it were really important, the calls would come from the company's number, I figured. Having left it for a few days, the relentless calls from the president continued. Thinking that I wouldn't be able to go on with my daily life like this, I reluctantly pressed the answer button. Then, I heard the president's loud voice from the other end.
Finally, you answer. Why have you been ignoring my calls? Things are tough over here.
What's the urgency? I asked, completely taken aback by his sudden yelling. However, the president, unfazed by my confusion, immediately demanded that I come to the office. It felt strange to visit the company where I had just submitted my resignation a few days ago, but I owed them for over 20 years of employment. What's the matter, sir?
You've done something terrible. Because of you, we're about to lose a major contract.
The president shouted angrily. Although I was reluctant, I went to the president's office as instructed. I felt uncomfortable and bothered about going to see someone who had treated me so poorly, but I was more worried about what had happened to the company. The president was already waiting in his office, arms crossed and looking irritated, waiting for my arrival. Sean was there too, lounging on the sofa, messing with his phone with a smug look. "You're late," the president said, angry at beginning to explain why he had called me. Apparently, right after I left the company, Sean went as my replacement to the client I had been dealing with. He unilaterally changed the contract terms to something completely different and pressured the client to accept these new terms.
Since Timothy was handling that project, I took it over and decided to redo the contract my way. But then the client suddenly got angry for no reason I can understand.
This was a major account you were handling. Did you, out of spite for leaving the company, give the client some disadvantageous information?
Faced with such baseless accusations, I was both angry and astounded. If there was room to doubt me, shouldn't the situation be sorted out first? You mentioned that Sean took over the project, but that's a very challenging company to deal with. Why was the rookie Sean assigned to it?
So, because it was an important client, I, the president's son, took it upon myself to deal with them. Yet, all they did was complain about my attitude and the smell of alcohol.
I was speechless for his words this time, for sure. "Sean, did you actually go to the business meeting drunk, and you tried to impose selfish contract terms on them with a disrespectful attitude, didn't you?"
That's...
Realizing his slip-up, Sean began to mumble. Instead, it was the president who started yelling in anger.
"What? You went to make a deal while drunk?"
I've been coming to work even after drinking before. I just drank a little to ease the tension.
Sean's retort turned the president pale. And for good reason. This client accounts for about 1/10 of our company's revenue. I had been fully briefed by a dedicated person and spent years building a crucial relationship with this important client. There was no way a drunken Sean could have competently handled the negotiation. The president and Sean began arguing loudly. Staying in the president's office would only mean listening to a family dispute. Just as I was thinking about leaving, an unexpected voice came.
"Excuse me."
Charles. The man who appeared at the door was the former president and now chairman of the company, Mr. Charles Thompson. Seeing him brought a smile to my face, filled with nostalgia and joy. After all, it was Charles who hired me at this company 20 years ago when he was the president. "What brings you here today, Charles? I heard you were on a business trip to our overseas branch."
"My schedule changed and I returned to the country yesterday. I heard about the commotion and came straight to the office."
The chairman responded with a smile. Then his expression turned stern as he confronted the president.
"I heard that you let Timothy resign without my permission. What were you thinking? I want to know why you allowed him to leave the company without consulting me."
Regarding that matter,
Seeing the furious chairman, the president turned pale and began to stammer an excuse. The chairman is usually a mild-mannered man, but his anger was clearly visible. As I was wondering what to do, he turned to me.
"Timothy, I'm sorry about this."
"No, I should apologize for resigning without informing you, Charles." As I apologized deeply, the chairman waved his hand to show he wasn't angry with me.
I really wanted to talk to you directly, so I asked the president to call you here. Can I ask what the direct reason for your resignation was?
I'm pleased to answer whatever you ask. At that point, I accurately conveyed the circumstances since Sean was assigned to the sales department. Sean and the president tried several times to interrupt my explanation in a panic. But each time, the chairman silenced them with a stern look and listened to me until the end. After hearing everything, the chairman quietly faced the president.
Just to confirm, Timothy is a talented individual I personally interviewed and hired. You are aware of that, right?
Of course, I am aware of that.
The president, clutching the hem of his suit, stuttered his responses. Sweat from tension and fear was gathering on his palms, and the expensive suit hem quickly wrinkled.
Timothy is indeed a skilled salesperson as expected, and he has an excellent reputation among our clients. He has secured several major contracts that we could only get because of him.
Yes.
While the chairman was talking about my career, Sean kept glancing at me, seemingly surprised by the recounting of my achievements. I was the one who, 15 years ago, when this company was still small, secured a contract with a major corporation leading in our industry. It's no exaggeration to say that successful negotiation was a key factor in our growth to the extent of having multiple branches nationwide. Given such a background, the chairman still holds me in high regard.
When I handed over the presidency to you, I made it a condition that any decisions regarding Timothy must go through me. Do you remember that?
Yes.
The president, like a machine capable of saying nothing but yes, just nodded and listened to the chairman's speech.
Yet, you fired him without consulting me. What were you thinking?
That. It was Timothy's own decision to resign. I thought it was not significant enough to bother you, the busy chairman, and planned to report it later.
Hearing the president's excuses, the chairman's forehead vein throbbed as he began to scold in a low growl.
I said that I would personally handle anything regarding Timothy, yet what audacity to make that judgment for yourself.
I'm sorry. I apologize for handling it on my own.
The president jolted, his body twitching as he repeated his apologies. Turning pale and apologizing deeply, but the chairman's anger did not subside.
There have also been numerous complaints from the client. It seems your son was the one handling them.
With all due respect, it was Timothy who trained my son, Sean. The situation arose because Timothy suddenly announced his resignation, and there wasn't sufficient time for a proper handover.
The president continued to beg, desperately trying to shift the blame onto me. It seemed clear he was trying to push the responsibility onto me with his contrived excuses. The chairman, with a stern face, looked thoughtfully at me and then asked,
Timothy, is what Henry's saying true? I can't believe that you would leave without properly handing over your responsibilities to Sean.
Tell me the truth, Timothy. I heard that Sean received no handover documents or data from you.
The president was desperately appealing to me. I hadn't realized how dysfunctional this company's system had become. I took a deep breath to tell the truth. Indeed, I did not pass on any handover documents to Sean. The chairman gasped in surprise at my words. In the corner of my vision, Henry and Sean were grinning as if they had succeeded in their plan. But they were celebrating too soon. I continued to reveal the truth. The reason is, I requested a skilled sales department employee to take over. I handed over all documents and data to that person and explained everything.
What?
A shocked voice echoed around the room. The president, looking incredulously at Sean, turned to me as I began to explain the details of the situation. If you check the shared folder in the system, you will see. This is proof that I conducted the handover before leaving the company. I operated the computer to display the internal data. There, clearly, were the documents and detailed data intended for use in the recent transactions. I also shared the drive and continued to communicate via email with the employee in charge even after I went on paid leave. However, he recently contacted me, saying that the project was suddenly taken away from him.
Yes, this is indeed a proper handover. Henry, what's this all about? Why did Sean go to the client instead of this employee?
The chairman, after checking the computer screen, glared sternly at the president and Sean. Sean, unable to utter another word, trembled and hung his head. Watching his son's condition, the president turned pale and interrogated him with an intense stare.
What? You lied about being assigned by Timothy. You took over the work assigned to another employee and went to the transaction on your own.
I was just so tired of doing mundane tasks all the time. I'm the president's son. I thought I could handle it on my own, since I've been watching negotiations alongside Timothy.
Sean suddenly screamed at the top of his lungs and began stomping his feet, throwing a tantrum like a child demanding a toy in a store. Seeing his behavior, which was so unbecoming of a professional, I was simply dumbstruck.
It's clear now that Sean instigated this situation on his own. How are you going to take responsibility?
The chairman's voice was filled with anger, and the president, teary-eyed, was frantically searching for excuses, but it was too late to shift the blame. Meanwhile, Sean, still flailing about, yelled, just like always, "Dad will handle it. You're the president. Just cover it up like before." But the president quickly covered his mouth.
Don't you understand the situation yet? Just be quiet.
It was probably the first time Sean had been sternly scolded by his father. He stood gaping, then lost all his strength and slumped to the floor, stunned. Silence fell over the president's office, and no one spoke. However, after a while, in a mosquito-like voice, the President Henry murmured an apology, "I'm very sorry," and made Sean apologize deeply beside him. Then, Henry too apologized deeply and began sobbing. Thus, the turmoil caused by the president and Sean in the company finally subsided. It seemed the incident was resolved, but there was more to come. Further investigation revealed several reckless schemes by the president. A team was set up within the company to find evidence for Sean's claims about his father covering things up. A thorough examination of the accounts revealed several opaque movements of money. It turned out that the president had been using company expenses to buy cars and altering receipts to pay for expensive meals. This misuse of expenses had been going on for 10 years, and Sean had grown up hearing his father boast, "Dad is an important person in the company, so he can spend a lot of money." Therefore, he mistakenly grew up believing he was a special being, enjoying company-funded furniture, clothes, and family vacations. Everything came to light, and the President Henry admitted to the embezzlement and formally apologized. He offered to repay the money and begged for forgiveness, but the chairman's anger was deep due to the betrayal of trust over many years. Also, for the sake of other employees, a lenient settlement was not passable, so a complaint was filed with the police. Numerous pieces of evidence were provided, and a formal charge of embezzlement was made. As a result, the president was naturally dismissed from his position and became unemployed. Sean also left the company with his father, and they are both trying to find new jobs. But it's been tough for Henry due to his age. While young Sean had several job opportunities, he couldn't hold on to any of them due to being spoiled all his life. Exposed to the normal world for the first time, he realized how terrible his attitude had been. Now, Henry works part-time in traffic management. Sean, in a distant region, helps with winemaking and somehow manages to get by. Sean, still unable to forget the lifestyle of his wealthy past, continues to live a life full of complaints. On the other hand, right after that discussion, I received an apology from the chairman.
If your decision to resign was because of your issues with Henry and Sean, I promise to take responsibility and resolve it. So, could you please consider returning to the company?
At that moment, I decided to reserve my judgment and fully use the paid leave I had requested. During my absence, the chairman conducted an internal investigation and, as promised, decided on the actions to be taken against Henry and Sean. Feeling sincerity in the chairman's swift response, I decided to return to the company. Not only my colleagues, but also our clients were pleased with my decision to retract my resignation. After Sean's rude behavior, the intended skilled successor apparently went to the client and managed to maintain the relationship. Later, as I officially returned to take over again, it seemed likely that I would be able to restore trust. After the president left, the chairman urgently returned to the presidential role to minimize the chaos. Additionally, he reviewed the employees who were appointed to important positions due to the former president's connections, reevaluating them to ensure proper assessments. Thanks to this, the company's atmosphere regained its vibrancy and moved towards a complete meritocracy where our work is genuinely valued. Motivated to work harder than ever to contribute to this company, I stepped into the office again today, ready to give my all.